They're guys. They do magic. They are the Magic Guys.
Oh, that was a good coin vanish. For everyone watching the pod, we just had a sweet, sweet coin vanish. You know, I like watching back these episodes because I get to see the tricks that we do when the intro starts, you know? Because I'm always just like looking at the camera's eye, not the screen in that moment. So I miss it. But you do some pretty magical coin vanishes, Nick K.
Well, you're a pretty awesome magician yourself there, Josh Nabito. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks. I noticed you didn't compliment my coin skills, so we'll just move along there. Hey, what's up, everyone? Episode 169 of the Magic Guys. It's great to have you all here. And I can see a couple of new names in the comment section. Caden, good to see you. Finally able to join one of these lives. Thank you for being here, my friend. The Magic Buzz, no stranger to the Magic Guys. And Tim Askin, one of the regulars. Timmy T, as we call him. And Nick, how are you feeling today, my friend?
I'm really. It's a great day, man. It's a great day. I get to hang out with another one of my awesome friends, other than yourself, of course. And a shame that Doug can't be here. He's out there doing beautiful things with his lovely partner. What a sweetheart he is. He's a good man. He's a damn good man. And I'm really stoked because, well, our guest today, went from being a hero to being a friend. And he's been one of the most important people in my magic career since day one in my 16-year career. So it's really cool that I get to hang out with him. Every moment I hang out with him is awesome, and he's going to be on the show. So I'm pumped.
Man, and Nick says that to me every week. And every week I say, man, it's no problem. I love being here with you. We're funny like that. There it is. There's our rim shot. So, yeah, this is going to be an exciting episode. This guy, he has a lot to do with magic in Australia. And, whenever we have a guest on, have you noticed this, Nick? And we say, who in Australia do you know? This is usually the guy that they reference, that they know of, if anyone from Australia. And so I think we should bring him on. And, Nick, what better way to intro him than with Nick K?
Friends, our next guest has been one of the most important figures in Australian magic. He has been responsible for so many amazing pieces of magic and been responsible for so much infrastructure that the Melbourne magic scene, if not the entire Australian scene, has to offer. It is my absolute pleasure to have him on the show. So please join me in welcoming the amazing Mr. Tim Ellis.
Oh, yeah.
Tim Ellis, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and thank you for being my friend. Please tell our lovely audience, who are you? What do you do?
I'm Tim Ellis. I'm a magician. That's it.
Perfect.
That's the show, friends. Thanks for listening. Next week, we're going to have...
Well, see you next time.
Thanks.
No, I'm just kidding. Tim, can I ask that what you just showed us when you came on, is that what's called light reading? Is that what that is?
It is, absolutely. You've got it. That's what it said on the box when I got it. It said a little light reading. Or maybe we're reading light, I'm not sure.
That's so good. That's so good. And what castle are you streaming from today, Tim?
My own castle in Northcote. I'm in the Merlin Room here in the Laneway Theatre.
Ooh, that might be a good place to start. What magician has the luxury of just having their own theatre so close to home, you might say? How long have you had the Laneway Theatre, and sort of could you give the viewers a little rundown on sort of what it is?
So I've lived here for about 20 years or so in Northcote in what used to be the Australian Broom Company. It used to be a factory. It was a very... I can show you, actually. I've got a little picture. I can show you a picture of what it was when I got it. There we go. That's how it looked when I got the factory.
Oh, wow.
So it was a bit of a mess when I got the thing.
It looks like something out of a zombie apocalyptic type of movie.
Yep.
It's
and there was so much dust in the air. You really couldn't walk in for very much time. It was just terrible, but it was a good price. So I purchased it back in, this will tell me, this book has got all the information, 1997. So I got in 1997. And downstairs was just my rehearsal studio and offices, and upstairs living space. And then eventually I was like, we really need a place to have magic where people can come to see magic in the way it's meant to be seen, in a beautiful custom built venue. And so as I've heard Nick Kay tell the story before, I happened across Hoyt's Greensboro Cinema that was selling their seats, and someone on eBay had bought them. So I bought a whole bunch of the seats from him, filled up my garage with these seats, and realized, well, if I want to ever park my car again, I'm going to have to build this theater. So I built the theater, and the rest is history. And I really like the fact that, every magician has a dream to have a theater, but to actually have the theater in your own house is so good. Because if your sales are not very good one night, just don't open. It doesn't cost you no overheads. It's fantastic. And when you finish the show, leave a mess, go upstairs, have a cup of tea, and go to bed. It's so easy.
Wow. And you actually have other magicians performing in your theater, right? At times?
Yep. Every year I do a brand new 90-minute show that I put together because I love creating new shows. So I think I've done maybe 6 or 7 different shows since not 2017 we opened it. When did we open it? 2017. So that's only 7 years. So I've probably done 8 shows. And they're all different, like Aspicadabra was one, talking about my Asperger's syndrome and how it helps with my magic and hinders. I've done some poker shows. I've done stand-up shows. I did one called The Magic Menu, which was based on a Zoom show that I did. And so I've done a whole bunch of different shows in here on Saturday nights. But then we also had Sleight Night, which was 4 different magicians. Nicholas Johnson used to run that every month. And now that has evolved into For My Next Trick, which Nick Kay, I think you're coming up on it, aren't you? In June,
Yes,
you're being featured on that one. And we've also done Magic Sports here during Comedy Festival. Lawrence Long has done a tryout show. Dom Chambers got a tryout show coming up, where they try new material. We've had magicians at work here at the Laneway Theatre when we weren't able to get back to the Art Centre after COVID. And lots of other magicians, including Nick Kay and Josh Staley and other people, have done their own solo shows. And we do shows here during the Magic Festival as well.
Wow.
I've had a guy doing a puppet show here once. I've had some burlesque shows, stand-up comedy shows, but I only rent it out to my friends.
Wow. Well, and how does it feel when you're upstairs and you can hear a magic show happening downstairs?
No, I'm usually downstairs watching the magic show.
Oh, gotcha.
I get free tickets. That's the bonus.
That question about the theater, Tim. Now, this was existing before the theater was in place. But for those of you who haven't experienced the Laneway Theater, it's a very magical experience, even upon arrival, because it's like finding a beautiful secret, kind of like getting to platform, 9 3/4 sort of vibe. And what I'm curious about is, what was the motivation for you? For those of you who don't know, when you walk in, you go through a graveyard, and then you enter a theater. And what was the motivation to do the graveyard? I've never actually had an opportunity to ask you before.
The graveyard already existed.
No kidding.
Before the theatre, but not before the warehouse. So
no, I get that. But
I did a show for the footwear industry at the Grand Hyatt called The Night of the Lost Souls. You could do your rim shot there.
Nice.
And we had my partner at the time did the gravestones and made these headstones. And so afterwards we had all these headstones. So what could we do? Oh, we'll use the front room, because the front room was always left as the original broom cap factory. So there's things in there that are actual old mechanisms, and like there's a millet machine which scrapes all the millet off. It's like a huge tumbler with spikes all over, and there's all this weird stuff in there. So that was always there. So I kept one part of the broom factory exactly as it was. And so that's the part that we changed and made into a graveyard, and we put an infinity pit in there. So it's like you look down, you can see forever down this massive pit. There's all sorts of different things. And then, of course, we changed the front door into a coffin. So you have to come through a coffin to get through. But one of the things I like is, and other people will dispute this, but I like the fact that we don't publish the address. And when people put the address on Google, we change it again, because we don't want people to know exactly where it is. Because I don't want people knocking on my door on a Wednesday afternoon going, "Is this the Laneway Theatre?" Because I go, "No, not today. On Saturday it will be, but it's not the Laneway Theatre today." Because I really enjoy my privacy. So people, when they book their tickets, they get the address and they get a map, and they have to find their way. And a lot of people do find it challenging because they think, oh, I don't need to download the map. I'll just look on Google. And then they're wandering the streets and I get phone calls, where are you? I go, you didn't get download the map, did you? And then they find the front door. And a lot of people say, I've had reviews saying, I was a bit concerned because I found myself walking down Murder Alley and I wasn't sure if I was in the right place. And then so you just basically buzz on the doorbell and I answer with hello, and that's it. And you have to know the code word before I'll actually approve you and let you in. And then you do come into the graveyard. And I've warned you, you must find your way through the coffin. So some people come straight through. Other people actually get lost. They try to cross the bottomless pit because there's another door, which they think, oh, maybe that's the right door. So we usually have to rescue a few people every night. It's quite fun.
Well, it makes for a good story as well. So I think, and
people love, they actually come in and they're like, I've got my money's worth already. And they do love the fact that they can bring their friends, and their friends are like, where are you taking me? Am I going to die? What is this place? So it's really, because I mean, there's no frontage to my place. I'm on the back section of a warehouse, and you have to come down an alley that does not look nice. And you do get a bit concerned if you're in the right place or not. But once you're in there, it really feels like you've discovered a hidden treasure. And Melbourne is all about secret venues.
100%. It's almost like a speakeasy there. Question, Josh?
Man, I just can't wait to come and actually check it out when I'm in Melbourne. It's I'm like one of our guests just said then, I think I've walked in on a strange point in this conversation. Yeah, bottomless pits, and you got to walk through the coffin, and yeah. Now I'm understanding.
Lawrence Long refers to it as like it's a cross between the Magic Castle and a sex dungeon.
I want to talk about how I first stumbled upon yourself when I saw you performing. You were originally hosting the galas at the Melbourne Magic Festival, and that's when I'd first connected with yourself. Seeing you, and it wasn't until afterwards where I had set up a friendship with Nicholas J. Johnson, and then he said that, oh, you should get this guy to do Magic Festival shows and so forth. The Magic Festival has been running for how many years now? 15, is it, Tim? We
started in 2008, and we had 3,200 guests watching 58 performances.
And now?
Last year we had 10,500 guests watching 158 performances. But the best year was 2019, just before the pandemic. We had 17,000 guests watching 310 performances over 2 weeks.
Wow. So, the thing that I find, like the motivation for you doing the things that you do, it's really staggering, because the reason I say that is like, yes, you organized a festival and, it's great for magic. None of it benefits you a whole deal, if I'm being honest. Everything that you've done for the scene. And I just wanted to commend you for that to our audience, because you do things for no other reason than it's good for magic. And I just want to help magic. So let's take it to the beginning. What made you go, Melbourne needs a magic festival?
To the beginning. So I was learning magic from Lindsay Reichel in a group called the Young Magicians. We're all teenage magicians. And so I felt like I was being given everything, all the help, all the support, everything. And so ever since then, I've wanted to return the favor. And I've probably people, oh, you've done enough. But I'm like, I still see performers coming up who just need a little bit of a push. And I like to help them. And you'll often find, I'm sure Nick's had the situation where I'm sort of going through a $2 shop or something. I'm like, hey, and I send a picture. This item, you're going to buy it. It's going to work for your trick or whatever it is. So I always love the fact that when you are a magician and you're aware of other people, it's not just you're looking for things for your show, but you can see things for their show as well and share that information. And I just think that's the way it should be. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, magic is a very competitive art form as opposed to collegiate. And I can understand, a lot of people like, I've got to pay for the kids, I've got to pay for their university, I've got to pay for their school, I've got to pay for all this sort of stuff they've got to cover. But you don't need to compete with each other. You don't need to sort of go like edge someone out of the gig just because you want the gig and you need the money. Because if you support each other, you end up giving each other gigs. That's the way it should be in my mind. I could be too naive for that. But that's the way I've always thought. And so as this group of young magicians grew up, I realized that, by pushing everybody as a group, it's much more a unique selling proposition for the media than it is just pushing myself. And so I would push people for the group. And this is the challenge that I had, especially back pre-Magic Festival. We had a thing called Magic Week, which was back in the 80s. And it was a bit like the Magic Festival, but different. And so I would often say, hey, media, it's Magic Week coming up. And they go, great, we want to do a story. And I call the other magicians and say, want to do a story? They're like, I'm not available today. Could they do it next week? No, they want to do it now. And what about you? Do you want? I'm a bit busy. And I would end up doing the stories. And then I'd get, he's just doing it for himself. He's always the one in the stories. I'm like, I offered it to you, please. Stories. Because I don't want the media just going, there seems to only be one guy involved in Magic Week.
Yeah.
I want them to see the range of magic, because that's the beauty of magic, because there's so many different styles and different types. People come to the Magic Festival now and they're amazed. They don't want to just see one show. They want to see 10, 15 different shows, because they see so many different types of magic and different, the sleight of hand, grand illusion, even the kids shows. The kids shows are fantastic. Adults come along to see the kids shows just because they appreciate, the abilities of the performers. That's really why I do what I do. Magic is the least appreciated and least developed of all the art forms, in my opinion. There's so much to do. And now I'm sitting here, I'm turning 61 tomorrow, and I'm going, I don't have enough time left to do everything I want to do.
Well, that's an interesting point you make, Tim, because I had a conversation with you not more than a week ago talking about the time we have left and so forth, and should I be worried about this, and should I be thinking because I'm turning 40 this year, so a part of me was going oh, do I need to start planning an exit strategy? And Zero Advice was like, nah, man, you're good to 75. And I was like, cool, thanks. So. Well,
I was on a cruise ship a couple of weeks ago, and the cruise director was 78.
Wow.
He's out there doing cruising. I was like, well, it was sort of good. It was sort of bad, because I was also going, I don't want to be on a cruise ship when I'm 78 and having slightly lost the plot.
Or do you? Is that the best place to be?
Well, he seemed very happy, but it was really, it was his ship and it was his world, and we were just a part of it.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Tim. You've been in the game for so many years. You've got a 20+ year, career in the spotlight, and I'm being polite. Okay, you've been around a lot longer. Right? We get it, right? There's a lot of people you've helped along the way. I'm one of them. And I like to think that I express my gratitude to you in not as many ways, but I definitely tell you that I appreciate you. What's it like when you go through your career, helping so many people, and then the moment you need a little hand back or ask if they will contribute the smallest little something to it, does that happen to you in your career when you go hey, man, if you wouldn't mind, could you do this? And they go, nah.
It's people. You can't expect to get something back.
And I feel like that's in sorry, Tim. I feel like that's in every industry too, right? It's not, it's a human nature.
If you're going to give, just give, and don't expect anything in return. And if people don't give back, way back in the day, I formed a company called Magic Unlimited, and there was a group of us, and the bookings would disproportionately come into me. And so the other guy's like, how come he's getting all the bookings? And it's like, I'm trying to farm them out, but if that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes. And so I would often give up bookings to other people, and then I'd be wondering why I wasn't getting referrals back from them. And I was speaking to somebody about this the other day and saying the solution was essentially to say, look, I'll give you a booking, you send me a $50 finder's fee, and we're square. And then you don't feel like, the relationship's out of proportion. You're not feeling like, I've just given you 10 referrals this month and you've given me none. What's going on?
Yeah.
You go, I've given you 10 referrals. You give me 10 finder's fees. We're square. That's fine.
Yeah. I also think it's important to identify the
get back.
You're right. But I also think it's important in those situations to identify the difference between a friendship transaction and a business transaction. You know, like there's things that you do just because you're friends. You know what I mean? Like when I was at the theater building chairs at your place, I wasn't like, yeah, my fee's $40 an hour. Like that was not going to happen. I was just like, you were like, bro, I'm building a theater. And I'm like, I'm on my way. And I like grabbed my tool bag and I was there and I had power tools. And then, you know, I built half the chairs in that place. And I was so happy to just be a part of it because everything is just good for magic. And I think that the lesson from this, listeners, is that if you give for the sake of giving without the expectation of anything in return, but do it to propagate things forward and not for your own self-gain, you can only do well. And for those watching live right now, there's a picture of me right there building the chairs on the YouTube.
I think that's a photo of Nick hiding a card reveal inside a cushion, so that if it ever happens,
one day he's going to say, "Where's your card? Slice that chair open."
Yeah, it's basically an index. He's got an index laid out. He knows which chair has which card. But no, that's amazing. Like the abundant mindset is something I've always believed in, and you're just explaining it, you know, to the 1000th degree. Like it's good for magic is good for everyone. Good magic is good for everyone. And
I like to think we've got a really good community here in Melbourne. I mean, there are always going to be cliques and everything like that. But every time we have magicians visiting, especially if they come to Magicians at Work, which is our monthly sort of get-together jam session, they go, I wish I had this in my club, because they see that the magicians are actually helping each other. They're working together. There was one magician who came to a Magic Festival who was he had like certain cities have different attitudes. So some people have got like a bit of a competitive attitude in their city. So he came in with a bit of competitive attitude, and at one point he had to put his whole setup really quickly, and the other magicians just jumped in and helped him, even though he'd been, not especially nice to anybody. They just jumped in, helped him, and he was like, "Wow!" And it just immediately changed his whole mindset to be like, "I've never experienced this before, but magicians help each other." Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's how it should be.
Yeah, what's that? And the fact that you mentioned that you're always on the lookout for props and things that would help people with their acts. I mean, you literally did that before we started this podcast. You held up a prop and was like, Nick, this is what you need for your next act. You literally did it before the show. He held up something that he wants Nick to have.
You want to show the listeners for a giggle? Is it nearby?
Look at this. This is
going to look so good on Nick K, you got to say.
Oh, yeah. This is how we should have started the episode. We should have introduced everyone with you wearing that.
I'm going to look like a discount, what's his name? Chronicles of Riddick dude.
Well, you did say that the Laneway Theatre is a cross between the Magic Castle and a sex dungeon, right? So those glasses kind of look like the dungeon part.
That's appropriate. Very appropriate.
Yeah. I have a question, Tim. Over the years, you've done a really good job because I've noticed you have TV appearances throughout different eras, like different shows that I remember being on at different points. And every year I seem to spot you on something promoting the Melbourne Magic Festival. And like, do you have any advice for magicians out there that are trying to get themselves known or get some kind of media of themselves? Like, how do you go about getting yourself on TV or on a segment?
I'm too old school. I mean, back in the day when we started the Magic Festival, it was just a case of put an ad in the Age Theatre Directory or the Herald Sun listings and everyone would come. Nice. It was that simple. And I was able to call up the newspaper and say, hey, we're having the Magic Festival. They go, oh, that sounds good. Let's do a story on it. And we had like 4 or 5 page features on the Magic Festival. And then, I'm going back a little bit, the Magic Week. And we had, massive stories. And then at one point they said, is this part of the Spoleto Festival that has just started? And I said, no, it's not. And they said, we're not allowed to report on it then. Because Spoleto had poured so much money into advertising, they'd pretty much bought up the media. So that's when Melbourne, the Magic Festival, Magic Week ended. And then there was nothing for a while. And then once I moved here to Northcote and got a good relationship with the Northcote Town Hall, I said, let's do a festival, because Northcote Town Hall wanted to become a festival venue, a theatre venue. So we created the first Melbourne Magic Festival in 2008. And again, I was able to still go back to the media and say, hey, it's the festival. And this is, I just love the fact that at the end of each show, they would hand an envelope of cash to the producer of the performer and say, "There's your money for the night." It was so good back in those days. Obviously, things have changed. This is just 2008. It's not that long ago. But this is how we were doing. We're just promoting and going on. But then, as the internet became more prolific, and everyone started doing social media, and newspapers became irrelevant, and TV became more impossible to get on unless you were a survivor or a bachelor or something like that. It was impossible. And so now I have no idea how to promote the festival. I do the best I can. We've hired professional companies and found they got us less coverage than I was able to get just using advertising on Facebook and stuff. So, yeah, I really don't know. It's like the Wild West out there. People say, yeah, pay us $10,000 and we'll get you this much coverage. And you do, and they don't. And that's the end of it. You've lost your chance. You have to find someone else. So, yeah, I don't know. The one thing I do know is that it's much easier to get coverage and media interest for a festival than it is for a one-man show. And that's, again, a benefit of magicians coming together and working together. I mean, comedy festivals are a perfect example of it. I mean, put aside all the government funding and all this corporate sponsorships they've got. But as soon as comedy festivals are on, everyone wants to go see comedy shows. As soon as it finishes, crickets. The comedy scene in Melbourne is very quiet. But during the festival, it's huge. And we find the same thing with Melbourne Magic Festival. I remember Simon Coronel came and he did his first shows here. He was like, wow, this is amazing. I'm so surprised everyone came to see the shows. So he then produced a show of his own at one of the venues and was like, oh, it's so much harder for people to come and see a one-off show than it is to see a show during a festival. And so that's why I keep pushing the festival and saying, it's a great idea. It's a good thing to do. My mum keeps saying, could you stop doing the festival because it's exhausting you? You're going mad doing the festival. She's saying, why doesn't anybody help me? I'm going, well, some people help me as best they can, but it has to happen. It's just something that the Melbourne non-magicians, the magic fans, tell me they really look forward to every year. And that when the festival comes up, they're all in there buying the tickets.
Well, let's also talk about how great the festival has been to bring talents from not only all over Australia, but all over the planet. Like, we've had the pleasure of flying over, Danny D. Ortiz. Yeah, there we go. This is the flyer. I'll be picking those up and doing letterbox drops later on today or tomorrow, Tim. But tell us this year. Let's talk about this year, this upcoming Melbourne Magic Festival. What are we expecting with regards to our international talents? Let's tell our friends.
The international talents has varied a lot over the years. We've had Ungul Lee, John Archer, Dan Sperry, Max Maven, Danny D'Ortiz, Woody Aragon, Joshua J, Mario Lopez, Rob Zabrecki, Bob Hayden, Hilda Gamiras, so many different magicians who've come across. And generally they come across because I invite them. I say, would you like to come to Australia? They go, that'd be great. And they come along. But since COVID, it's become much harder because people don't want to travel so much. And prices have gone up so much. And so, whereas the past we could say, hey, do you want to come along? They go, sure. And we'd cover the costs and all this sort of stuff and they'd have a great time. Now it's much harder. Now it's sort of like negotiations and stuff like that. But thankfully, I've still got some friends who are very keen to come to Australia. And when I was in Taiwan last year doing the Taiwan Magic Association convention, which I love to do, and there is also, if you want to drive people crazy, there's a music video they finally released of the yes, of the time. Remember, I had that song. We're going off track a little bit. Yo-Yo, who runs the Taiwan Magic Association, she said, for our anniversary, we want to write a song. I've written it in Chinese, and here's the translation. Could you see if this works in English? I was like, it does not work in English. It's got things like, is my happiness such that I can have enough extra baggage to carry on with all my joy and all this sort of stuff? The translations were crazy. And I'm like, oh. So I sort of tried to rewrite it as best I could. And she's like, oh, I think we love it. I'm going, okay, that's great. Have it. And so she then, because they'd had a music track recorded already. And so she said, could you sing it along to the music track so we know how it fits? Like, oh. So I did. And she wrote back and said, don't worry, we'll get an AI to sing it for us to see how it fits.
Oh, no.
Thanks. In the end, and there was a rap sequence. She insisted I do the rap sequence live, which was fine. And then finally, when I went and did the convention, they said, "Oh, we're going to get you to mime the song, but sing the rap sequence in the finale of the convention." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And they had Onguli on keyboard, Mario Lopez was there, I think, on a guitar, Hector Mancha was on a ukulele, Ruby was on drums. All these famous magicians just coming up and jamming. So this video clip is insane if you wanted to play Spot a Magician. Wow. So you can find it, link it up. It's really good.
People already mistake us for musicians, and now you're literally made magicians musicians. That's just way too confusing now.
Well, as Nick knows, I'm doing, I think, my third course in songprov, which is improvised singing, because I just love to try pushing myself into really uncomfortable areas. So
I mean, one of the best clips I think I've seen of Tim Ellis is doing linking rings to a rock song. I mean, your improv is pretty good.
If you don't mind making a fool of yourself, look, the best thing, I'll get back to Magic Festival in a second, but the best thing about Magic Sports, which is what you're talking about with Drunk Tech, the game there, is you learn how to fail. You learn how to fail and enjoy it, because you suddenly realize it doesn't matter if you fail. It's not brain surgery. You know, if you can't find the card, be honest about it. Like my story, my go-to story is I was watching Bert Newton on TV one day, live TV, and he's talking, and this new product, blah blah blah, and then what was that? Is everyone all right? Because he heard a noise off camera. Is everyone all right? Yeah, okay. Oh, good. Anyway, and continued on, and I was like, he wasn't aware if the audience at home could hear the noise, but he was aware that if the audience at home heard the noise, they'd be going, "What was that noise?" and not listening to him anymore. And I was like, this is the best thing. So if something happens during your show, don't ignore it and just plow on. You, whoa, and you incorporate it and bring the audience in on it. And they feel like, oh, this is live. Anything could happen. And that's the feedback we get with the audience from Magic Sports. They're like, I've been to magic shows before, but they always look so slick. Looks like the magician knows exactly what he's going to do. Of course, he's going to find the card. Of course, he's going to be able to solve the person out of joy. Of course. But with Magic Sports, when Nick Kay's blindfolded and Josh Staley's blindfolded and they're trying to do multiple card selections, there's no way they can do this. It's not going to work. And the audience, you know, sometimes they really enjoy the fact that you tried, but you didn't get it. But that's the thing with magic. You know, spontaneity, authenticity. Forget about being slick and being, I am the great magician, because that's the old school. You know, that they like to see genuine people doing stuff. Anyway, Hector Mancha is going to be.
Tangent much, Tim? Tangent much?
He's he is brilliant. If you've seen Hector Mancha only do his FISM act, which is what he got the world championship for, which is where he's producing money. He's like a miser. It's a wonderful routine. Yeah. I've seen it side stage to see how it works, and it's just it's incredible. He's not going to bring that act. He's got better stuff. He's got better stuff. He during the gala show, he was comparing one of the gala shows. He was on another gala show. He did some stuff with Mario Lopez. He was jamming. He was improvising. He was hilarious, and his show is just so good. He does pickpocketing all throughout the show as well, and he's just wildly funny. So Hector is well worth coming along to see. And we have some other people who are coming that are not official international guests, but Gabriel Gascon, you might have seen on Fool Us doing the sponge-ball stuff.
Yeah.
Ooh. He's completely revolutionized sponge ball magic.
Absolutely.
You just watch him do sponge balls and you're like, I have no idea what is going on. Look up the clip on Fool Us and you'll see. So Gabriel's doing a kids show and an adult show and also a lecture as well.
Was this the routine he was using sponge balls in a bowl, some kind of bowl? Was that the routine?
No.
Was that the act?
He's like sponge balls in his hand, and they're changing color.
Ooh, okay.
And they're like, put a blue on it, and then it's green. I was like, well, hang on, and that you just, as a magician, you're watching, going, I really don't know what techniques he's using. This is just crazy.
Yeah. Unless you're colorblind, then you're like, there's no magic here. Yeah.
Now, as well as bringing these acts over, there are also a lot of lectures and so forth that come along with that. Like in the past, we've had the amazing Boris Wilde do his lecture, and I think it's really awesome of you to actually do that and bring.
We were doing that. Yeah, we were doing that before Magic Festival. We'd have David Stone would come to town. I'd say, hey, let's do a lecture while you're here. People happen to be passing by on cruise ships or whatever it is, or just friends who say, oh, I'm going on holidays, and can you set me up with some clubs and stuff? And they always go, yeah, sure, let's do it. And now we try to push our lecturers to go to Anthony Damasi's Magic School of Confidence, because it's a really nice venue. It's got a good vibe, and Anthony really looks after everyone. It's something he really wants to do with host lectures. He had Dan Harlan recently. So he's had all sorts of different lecturers come through, and during the year he'll have different lecturers go along to the Magic School of Confidence. But yeah, we've got Gabriel is going to be doing his lecture at the Magic School of Confidence on the day after the Magic Festival, and Hector's doing his at the Magic Festival in Arrow on Swanston in the Cardini Cabaret. But we always love having lecturers, but that's the thing. The Magic Festival is not for magicians. It's for magic fans.
Correct.
Because I've been running Melbourne Magic conventions, the Australian conventions we used to have. You probably don't remember them. We used to have one in Sydney, and then 2 years later it would be Sydney, and then next year it would be Melbourne, then Sydney, then Melbourne, back and forth. And so we'd alternate the cities, and we just stopped, basically. People just found it too much work. But what I found frustrating with those lectures, or those conventions, is they were only for magicians. We're doing gala shows for magicians. We're having competitions with magicians in front of magicians. So that's why I started doing Magic Week and the Magic Festival, because I thought we should be performing in front of normal audiences. We can come and watch each other's real shows, not just our shows that we've made up especially for magicians. Because often people will say, oh, FISM, you're just trying to fool other magicians. None of that stuff is practical in the real world, which is a whole nother conversation. But I think seeing magicians do their shows, like when I saw Tim Credible do his kids show, I was like, this is how kids' magic needs to be done. He's so gentle with the kids. He's just such, he's got total control of them. And it's a masterclass in kids show magic. You don't need to go to a lecture. You just buy a ticket and come and see his show.
Yeah.
And that's the same with a lot of performers. You don't get to see the real work.
Well, that's a really interesting point you make, saying that like magic should be performed for people. It's like the very first thing I say in my lecture. Actually, I say that don't worry about impressing magicians; they're not going to hire you. It's like the very first thing I say. But it brings me on to my next question. My next point, which is the magicians at work. I've only mentioned it a few times here on the podcast, but I thought maybe you could explain it a little better to everyone else and what we do and what it offers magicians and the public.
All right. Well, I'll take you up first of all on that. Don't try impressing magicians, because they don't hire you. They do. That's how I actually became known around the world, by being hired by magicians to appear at magic conventions internationally. So by doing magic at FISM, first act I did that I got an award for was the 6-card rap. And diversion story again, as usual. So I did the 6-card rap. It's a 6-card repeat, but done as a rap. And it was 1991, so it's well dated. And I said when I turned 50, I'd retire it, and I put it on the market, which I did. And then I got all this bad feedback from people saying, how dare you sell this trick? It's yours. Don't sell it. But I'd still get people asking me to do it. So it's really weird. Anyway, so 1991, do the 6-card repeat, 6-card rap. I got a special award, so I got to perform it on the gala. And on the gala, they'd pinned the microphone to me with a safety pin, and the safety pin went through the cable of the microphone cable. So when I came out, I'm like, all right, I do the introduction. I start singing, one, yep. And I just went, cut, stop the music. So we're going to do this thing. We're going to do it properly. And the audience went, wow, because there'd been lots of technical mistakes, but the magicians had just gone, continued over the technical mistakes instead of calling them out. And so Ali Bongo, who's hosting, he comes on with a microphone stand and he's rapping along to the music with a microphone stand, puts it in front of me. And I'm just filling in for a few minutes while they sort it all out, while they come and change the microphone and stuff. And afterwards, Pete Byro, who's a big guy in the American magic scene, who booked all the IBM conventions, all this sort of stuff, he came up and said, that was incredible. I've never seen anyone fill and handle a situation like that so well. I said, That's just like a normal show for Australia.
Sure.
Always something wrong. You know, we just accept it. And he immediately booked me to do the Milwaukee IBM or SAM convention, whatever it was in America. And then I did all these other things, and it just went on. So, you know, by performing to impress magicians and doing FISM stuff, you will get a reputation within the magic world, which is great. But also, so many people now know how tricks are done. They watch Fool Us, they Google solutions, they YouTube it, and I sort of approach my magic now as though I'm only performing for magicians, because I figure if I'm going to fool people who know how this trick's done already, then the people who've got no idea are going to be really fooled, you know. And I even on the cruise ships, I've had people come up and go, "Yeah, my dad used to do that trick, and it has this such and such gimmick. But yours is different, is it?" I'm like, "Oh, really got me." And it's so much better than people going, "Oh, yeah, you did a good job. I know that one, but you did it well."
Yeah, you get the exact
that's
polar
true.
opposite, even it's totally different methods. Yeah.
And it's like that notion of when people know a little bit about magic, it makes them appreciate what you're doing even more so.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what Magicians at Work is about, bringing this full circle. Magicians at Work is about us bringing our routines in together and saying, this is how far I've got. What else can we do with it? And we jam and we put our heads together and go, what about try this and try that? And this is where magicians who've come from other clubs and sit with us, they're like, I can't believe you're all just sharing all this gold, you know, because we come up with so many different ideas. And every second month, the magicians will do a show for the public, which is free, but the public have to write notes after every act. So after every act, they've got a minute to write down, you know, I saw it coming out his sleeve, or I thought it was this, or this was whatever. And they send the notes back. And then at the end of it, we have a theatre director who's come in and they give us theatre notes on the performances as well. And so it's really very collaborative. You know, we want each other to succeed. We want each other's magic to get better. And I like to sort of see myself as a magic doctor, where I look at a trick and go, yeah, I can see this trick is suffering from, you know, extended palm. we need to eliminate the palm in this routine or whatever it is. And I love, like, the razor blade eating was one of my first things I did that. I love the razor blade trick, but I always see people go, slice, slice, slice. Or they would put the blades in and then have a big drink. And I'm like, if I was an audience member, clearly I would think something's going on there. So I wanted to come up with a way to just slice, swallow, slice, swallow. And I put my routine together, and you know, I've got lovely compliments from people like Jeff McBride, who says like the best razor blade routine ever. But all I've done is gone, what's the weak point of that routine? What's the part that the audience would go, okay, something's wrong there, and eliminate it. You know, you've all done it. You know, when you're doing sponge balls and you suddenly go, I'll roll my sleeves up and do sponge balls, and now it's 20 times better.
Absolutely.
Even though it had nothing to do with the sleeves, you've just fixed a weak part of the trick. So that's what
really important to do things like that and add strength to your routines. You know, like almost everything I do or have created, it takes at least 7 reiterations before I'm actually like, okay, now it's good.
But it's always evolving. Everything's evolving.
Yeah.
Now the stuff I was doing on the cruise show last week, and I finished, I'm like, why didn't I think of that before? I've got to change this. You know, simple little things. And I just go, that should have changed. There was like, I'm doing a thing with a ring vanish, and I do, because I had to do a split show with someone, which I never do. Normally I would take the person's ring, I'd have it in a wine glass sitting there, and then I'd do a few tricks, then I'd bring in a ball of wool and do this other stuff, and then eventually it reveals it's in the ball of wool. But because I had a split show, there's the ring, and then I brought out the ball of wool, and I'm like, it had a good reaction, but it wasn't as strong as before. I need to separate the moment of putting the ring out and bringing the ball of wool. So I did a kind of sort of rope routine in the middle and then brought out the wool, and it was 20 times better reaction. But it's those weird little psychological things that you learn throughout the years, if you're paying attention, where you go, how's the audience thinking? You know, at this point, they're thinking, there's the ring. Like, sorry, with Teller about the ring under the handkerchief. You know, you borrow someone's ring, put it under the handkerchief, As soon as the ring's out of sight, they're going, it's not the same ring anymore. Even if they can feel it, they go, it's not the same ring. Something's happened. The ring's gone somewhere.
Yeah.
And we've just accepted you can put a ring under a handkerchief and have them hold it, and they will assume it's their own ring. They don't. You don't assume that. You wouldn't assume it. You'd be like, I want to have a check. No, you can't look. Oh. So you've got to look at a trick and say, what's the weak point of the trick? How can I fix it? It's a sick.
Yeah.
You take it to hospital.
Yeah, it's also difficult. It's also difficult when, if you don't have a doctor or Medicare, and you and you have to be self-critical. Do you think the self-diagnosis is a good thing to do, or if we just, like, how does one be, their own doctor?
It's really hard. It's really hard because you are your own worst critic, but you're also your biggest fan.
I mean, with
you wouldn't be doing magic if you didn't believe in yourself.
That's true. And with the Melbourne Magic Festival, like, do you give advice? Do you get people asking for advice on how they need to put together a show for the festival?
I do warn people if they do ask me my advice, because often they get it and they regret having asked. Because I have Asperger's syndrome, so I'm going to tell them exactly what's wrong. Because I don't necessarily think, emotionally I have to break it to them gently. I try to give them a few good points before I tell them exactly why they should not be in magic.
But that everyone actually needs that advice, right? Like, there's too much politeness.
Yeah, but it's not everyone can take it, and most people can't. Like Lindsay, who taught me, his way was he was very rough. Like you do a fantastic show, you'd come off it and go, "Well, son, have you been on yet?" You're like, "Whoa." I remember one magician who'd never met him before did the act, and, "Well, what do you think, Lindsay?" And Lindsay just tore it to pieces, and they were like, "Oh," and they didn't do magic again after that. And Lindsay's response was, "If they can't handle it from me, they're not going to be able to handle hecklers."
True.
That's a good point. Yeah,
but it's also, everyone's got their own way. Some people have to be nurtured and gently taken through the steps, and they can become brilliant artistic performers. But I think with magicians especially, I think we have to have a thick skin, because we're going to cop it from the audience. We're going to have people yelling out things during the show, or grabbing our pockets, wanting to have a look in things during strolling magic. And if you, or even just walking up to a table and going, "Would you like to see some magic?" And they go, "Nah." And you go away heartbroken because, like, "Oh no, they rejected me." It's like, no, they didn't reject you. Timing was wrong, and you were really asking a lot of those people. So, just expect that sometimes people don't want to see magic. But this is the thick skin that magicians have to have. So, to an extent, I think Lindsay is quite right in what he's saying. It doesn't work for everybody, and there are some people I know who are very delicate flowers who do beautiful magic. And they're in their own environment, their own bubble that they've created, and they create wonderful things, and that's great. And I would not want to be giving criticism to them because it would destroy them.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that sort of triggered a memory that you'd said to me, and it's one of the most important things that I carry with me. It's like literally tattooed in my magic DNA. And what you said was that magic is such a strong form of entertainment that it carries even the weakest performer.
Oh, yeah.
And that hit me real hard when you said that. And I thought about it because it's the same reason why an 8-year-old can look like an absolute master Jedi with a pack of playing cards or some sort of gimmick versus someone who's put in, years and years and years of magic like we have in this chat. So it's an important thing to learn because it can.
It's not until the audience sees a lot of performers that they can start to understand the difference. It's like if you only saw one singer in your life and that singer was out of key and terrible, you went, "Oh, they remembered all the words. They were really good," and that was it. You'd have nothing to judge them by. But with magicians, it's not until you come to a magic festival and you see a whole bunch of different magicians, you start to go, "Well, that guy was really good. He was clearly much better than that person over there." Because they can start to judge. They can get a standard in their head. And that's why Fool Us is so good. The audience can see different magicians go, "Well, that, that one, cool, So they get to see it, and it's not a case of the weakest performer just getting carried, because they can see the magic, which is usually from non-magicians, whether it be a sponge ball appearing in your hand or a card appearing at the fingertips or someone getting sawn in half. It's the same to the audience. They go, oh, I was surprised and I didn't know how it was done. Well done. Yeah. But when they see it performed well, and this is a lot, I mean, I'll sound braggy, I don't mean to, but this is what I loved when I'm doing the cruise ships. I'm getting people coming up and giving me comments about the storytelling in the show and the presentation and how, and these people on the cruise ships that I do, they've seen hundreds of magicians on these ships. They've seen a lot of magic. And I'm getting wonderful feedback, which I'm thrilled with, because, you're always wanting to improve yourself. You're always wanting to get better. And they're saying, we really love the storyline and the presentation and the way you engage the audience and the way it's very authentic and all this sort of stuff. And my favorite piece of feedback was one guy said, I've seen a lot of magic, but yours was the first show when I was genuinely scared.
Wow.
Because it got to the point in the show where he was just going, oh yeah. Okay, I have no idea how that was done. Oh, that must be real. I know, that can't be. I'm like, it really freaked him out because he had no other explanation apart from it must be real. And I was like, okay, that's my new standard.
Yeah. Wow. Do you have any? That's so. I mean, that's what we all want to be at, right? Like when people are just questioning their own reality. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you have a general have you noticed a theme for the shows that do well at the Melbourne Magic Festival? Like in terms of magicians wanting to come and do a show there, like are there any tendencies that shows have that you've noticed tend to do well? Like is it when they are storytelling more, or
we try to encourage people to break the mold, and like everyone's out there doing their corporate shows, they're out there doing their kids shows, they're out doing family shows. Magic Festival's a time you do something different. Everyone's got in the back of their mind, they've got their dream show, whether you're aware of it or not. You've got in the back of your mind, if I had unlimited budget and I could do anything I want, I'd do a show like this. That's what we want. We want your dream show. And look, last year I gave a Director's Choice Award, and last year I had to give 2 Director's Choice Awards because I could not split. The 2 shows were so different, but had excelled in the areas they chose. So one was Dom Chambers, A Boy and His Deck, which is a hilarious magic show and devastatingly clever, and so much originality in it. It's exactly what the Magic Festival is all about. The other was Dane's Certificate, The Sun and the Moon. And it was so unusual and so different. It was just a 20-minute show in the close-up gallery where he performed in front of a projector, a video projector light. And that was pretty much all that was lighting him. It was his own music compositions, his own video content. And he just came out and the light would hit him and he'd start doing this and start doing that. And the audience, every show came out going, they couldn't describe their feelings. And for me to watch a magic show and see an audience come out and move, but not really understand why or how or anything, I'm like, that has achieved a goal. That is something that magic doesn't normally do. And so Dane, if you've ever seen Dane's work, it's weird, it's unusual, it's abstract, it's surreal. It doesn't necessarily make sense half the time. And sometimes it doesn't even work. But it's just an enchanting experience that you will never forget. And so I was like, okay, these 2 shows, they are Director's Choice. So that to me is like what I want to see at the Magic Festival. I want to see people just taking their idea and pushing it as far as they possibly can. And sometimes, they go too far. Sometimes you'll see a show and you go, you got to pull back a bit. Usually it's a show that perhaps has overestimated their political correctness, and maybe they're maybe it would have been good in the 80s, and perhaps it's not appropriate anymore. Those are the shows that tend to find they don't have an audience at all after the first performance. But because it's not a curated festival, and we let people in, I curate the hub to an extent, but people are going to get what they're going to get. You don't go to the comedy festival and then see a bad show and you write to the comedy festival and say, I want my money back. But the Magic Festival, they do. If they see a bad show, they'll write to me and say, that was a bad show. usually we talk to the producers, and the producers go, "Yeah, I had a bad night. I'm giving him his money back." So it's a very wholesome community feeling. But there's so many different styles of magic, and I just want to see more and more and more, and I want to be surprised every year.
What a fun place to be directing this and getting to see all these things come to life. And for magicians that are hearing this right now and they're like, oh, that sounds like the place I want to go and actually gives me a reason to create my dream show. How does one end up in the Melbourne Magic Festival? Like what part of the year do you start like taking submissions for?
Usually we open submissions in October. So it's a long process. So October through to about January, people can apply. I see somebody in the chat has just said, would you ever consider gospel magic at the festival? We've had that. We've had about 5 or 6 different gospel magic shows in the festival. And they've been successful. Every type of show that you want to have. We've also had tarot shows at the festival. You can have any style you want to have. Your audience is going to be your audience, whatever audience you can gather. We had a guy, Gospel Illusionist from Sydney, who was going to come down. Pandemic hit and he wasn't able to. We're still eager for him to come down and do his shows. But we also have satellite venues too. So you can be a part of the festival and not be at the hub in the Arrow. You could come out and do shows in schools or different venues. Where we have Fortress was going to have a show. I think Sebastian was going to do a show at Fortress, and we have shows at Storyville. We have shows at the Butterfly Club, MC Showroom, all sorts of different places. So there's so many different ways to be a part of the Magic Festival and the open mic Magic Night. So if you've only got one trick, contact LJ and sign up for the open mic Magic Night, and you'll get to perform and give it a go. And we also have the Best of the Fest, which is where performers who are in the festival can jam with other performers on a late night show.
Wow. Well, it just clicked my brain. I remember you mentioning how when people come to visit Melbourne, they talk about how good the magic scene is there. And I think, didn't I read a tweet of Teller saying exactly that? He was like, oh my God, Melbourne is like the hub of magic or something like that.
He says the Mecca for magicians. Yeah.
That's right.
Teller was interesting because when he came out, he wasn't really wanting to jam. Penn never does really, but Teller was not really interested in jamming with magicians. But because I've known him for a long time, I said, let's go and have dinner. Oh, all right. So we got a dinner, and Nick Kay was there, and a few other magicians were there. We went to a beautiful restaurant, really nice restaurant. And he'd also been invited to go to the Magic Circle Club. And that's a different thing. And so hobbyists go along there. It's a good club. They get along and they have a good time. Anthony Damasi's now president of it. No, it was not IBM. ASM, the ASM, yeah. ASM, he was invited. And so he said, I don't want to go to the ASM because it'll be just another club. It's just another club. I don't know. And so he came and had dinner, and he was just amazed at the fact we're all jamming together and talking together. And he was really enjoying it. And then afterwards he said, Tim, I think I'm going to go to the ASM after all. Like, okay. So he went along to the ASM, and there was a guy doing a lecture on the Svengali deck.
Yeah, that was Eddie Calusi who was doing an amazing lecture on that deck. I ended up playing 2 decks with him.
You can imagine his reaction when Teller walks in and sits down in the front row. And Teller came in and said, I learned a few things about the Svengali deck I didn't know. It was wonderful. And after that, we took him to the hot springs, took him out. Almost every night he was out to dinner with magicians. And then when he went to Sydney, I thought they'd already been to Sydney. I think he went to Brisbane. I think then he started meeting up with the magicians in Brisbane as well. But he was just really happy to find a community of magicians that was different to what his experience. And he's had a lot more experience than I have. His experience in magic has been not positive with magic clubs and magic groups. So I was really pleased that we were able to change his mind a little.
And you know what? And I think that you're partly to not blame, but to be credited for I'll blame you. You're the reason. You're the reason, Tim, that Melbourne magic scene is so awesome. And I think it's because you influenced me with your kindness, and you gave me opportunities that I've truly felt I did not even deserve, but you were kind enough to extend the hand of friendship to me. You put me in your festival. You allowed me to sell my tickets and build my career. You helped me build so many routines. not only and I can only speak from my own personal experience, but I've seen you do it for so many other people. And I carry that same notion of helping people today through booking people at all my residencies. And, you know, like LJ, who you made mention a moment ago, like he's able to leave his 9-to-5 job and work full time for us at Omegan because
that's what I'd love to see that happen. I love to see magicians like, I mean, Dom, for example, he was one of our first junior champions in the Australian Junior Champion of Magic. And now look where he is. I love to see these magicians who become famous and well known around the world, but because they're doing fresh, original, authentic magic, and they're not just, you know, cardiographic, floating table, you know, all the same stuff that everybody else is doing.
Bolorama.
Yeah, they're doing. There's an old joke on cruise ships. They say if we had a Bolorama, a cardiographic, and a floating table backstage, the magicians wouldn't have to bring anything.
Yeah.
Oh, and a snowstorm as well to finish off. But it's like there's so many cover bands, so many cover magicians. There's a market for that, I guess. But why? You know, why should, like a famous magician once said to me, he said, "Oh, I wish I could be so creative." I'm like, why? What's stopping you? You know, everyone's creative. That's why magic sports exist. So you can create. So you play the games, you can play the exercises, and you can suddenly find, you know, you can create stuff that you hadn't thought you could create before. But this magician said, "I can't afford to be bad." And I said, "You can't afford not to be bad. You have to be bad. You know, you have to fail, because you know how humbling it is, Nick, when you get on stage and you fail, and then you're like, it puts you back in your place." And I'm constantly failing. If I have a show and nothing goes wrong in the show, it's been a waste of time for me, because every time I fail, I learn. Every time something doesn't work, and I go, you know, like the great time when I went to the first cruise after the pandemic, no luggage at all. I'm going to do a big stage show for 45 minutes for 2,000 people with nothing, literally nothing. And then the show that I ended up creating worked really well. And there are parts of that show that are now in my other show. Like I had a massively complicated prediction routine with a boarding pass, which I designed. I was so proud of myself. I designed this thing so it was hands off. I had like the Amaze box. I had a $1,200 watch that would do this and all this stuff. So I could just say, go do that. But there it is. I couldn't do that. I ended up using a very simple homemade device that wouldn't fool anyone, I thought. And it was so much stronger. And that's now replaced all these gimmicks in this. You know, now it's literally like they've written all the suggestions into champagne buckets, like destinations, times, and airlines into different buckets, and I just collect 1, 2, 3. They're read out, and it matches. And I'm like, people are coming out, "How did you do the boarding pass trick?" I'm like, I've never had that reaction from the boarding pass trick before. It's, you know, just open yourself up to failure. It's good. Embrace failure, like Keith Johnson says with Fear Sports.
Absolutely, Tim. I think these stories are true. Like, they're so inspiring, and you've inspired me. And I tell you this, you know, on a regular basis. And I hope that our listeners got a lot out of today, and the Tim stories and knowledge have inspired you guys as well. So, Tim, believe it or not, that hour went by a lot quicker than what I expected. This has been so pleasant. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Now, before we wrap up, Tim, we do a little thing called the final word. So we'll roll into the final word and give you an opportunity to basically have the final word on the podcast, and you can say anything you need to say, promote anything you need to promote, and then you'll take it out, wrapping up the podcast. Are we ready to go to the final word, Tim?
Okay.
Let's do it.
The final word. I had no idea this was coming up. Okay. Come along to the Melbourne Magic Festival. It's happening July 1 to 13. And July 8 to 13 is the best show of the festival. 12:15 daily. I've got to find it. I don't know where it is. I wrote this program. I don't know where it is. Oh, there we go. There it is. This is the show you want to see. These are a few of my favorite tricks. It's a show that I'll be doing, a family show. I put in there. It's got all sorts of favorite tricks in there, including soda resurrection, the rings, ring flight into ball of wool, beautiful card, rising card effect. And of course, I saw a child in half at every show as well, just like you want. So yes, come along to see. These are a few of my favorite things, or just come along to the Laneway Theatre any Saturday night and see the Magic Box, which is my current show and the one that I'm most proud of at the moment. So many options.
Thanks for listening. It's time for us to disappear now. But we'll see you again on the next episode of The Magic Guys.